You already know what time it is. Welcome back into the What Off-Season Sports Podcast, everybody. Coming up on today's episode, we are officially about halfway through the NFL season. I've got Jansen Harris, CEO of the Just Good Network, and now he just launched his own sports podcast as well, The Final Play. You'll be able to check that out wherever you get your podcasts at. Of course, on Instagram, you can find Jansen. And never forget, as always, just check out the link in the bio of all of our social media pages, and you'll be able to see every bit of content that the show is putting out for you. But on today's episode, we're going to be going through our mid-season awards. Who's the MVP? Who's the coach of the year? Offensive player of the year? Getting into some shenanigans there. Initially, though, Jansen, how are you doing today, man? Great to have you back on the show as always.
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm glad we got together on this one, Adam. A lot of great things are going to happen with us working together, brother. We just had that conversation about the podcast. I believe it was Saturday. So, you know what I'm saying? I was very excited, very encouraging conversation. I'm so happy that we could come in here and talk about these NFL topics, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I'll actually let you kick it off. If you had to go ahead and declare your MVP through 8 weeks of NFL football, who is it going to be, Jansen?
It's going to be Russell Wilson, man. Leads the NFL in touchdown passes.
Exactly.
Through 7 weeks, he has the second most touchdown passes. I love how DK Metcalf how he's emerging under Russell Wilson in this Pete Carroll offense.
Yeah.
Look, when you look at Seattle, they're used to running the football more than passing. This year's different. Last year was different, but this year's even different. Even more different. You have Russell Wilson. He's playing at an MVP level. And what I like is he wants to be the best player in the league. He knows it's his team, it's his offense. This isn't the Legion of Doom teams where he had great defenses. He had Marshawn Lynch. It's Russell Wilson. It's even past the numbers, man. If you just look at his attitude, you look at his deep ball, you look at his smarts in bad situations, and maybe that's a little bit of an oxymoron. But what I mean by that is this. A lot of quarterbacks, they try to force it in double coverage. They do stupid things when they're rattled. Russell Wilson, he's rarely rattled. And even when things are going wrong, he's a leader. He knows how to keep that. He knows how to keep that team calm. And that's what I like about him. Throws the ball away, or he'll throw it where only the receiver can get the ball, or it's going to be an incomplete pass. That's what you got to love about him. I know he had the 3-interception game, and that's maybe what is tightening things up with a Patrick Mahomes. And if you look at an Aaron Rodgers, I would throw him in the mix, maybe even a Tom Brady. But at the end of the day, Russell Wilson's the favorite. And if he could get to 50 touchdown passes, I think it'll be unanimous, man. Or if he could even potentially break the record. So it's Russell Wilson. I think he has the lead right now.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I think everybody listening to the show right now, definitely everyone that's already putting their predictions out there, we know that letting Russell Wilson, the front runner for the MVP, I mean, the guy's completing 72% of his passes, just about on pace to throw almost 5,000 yards and almost 60 touchdowns. And I know a lot of people are kind of overworked with, 5 interceptions in the last 3 games. And you can really argue that the Seattle Seahawks should have at least 2 or 3 losses on their record right now. But when you look at why they haven't lost those games and you go back to what MVP stands for, most valuable player, you cannot deny that Russell Wilson is bringing all the value to that Seahawks team with a defense that is starting to play a little bit better. But we know, of course, that the defense for the Seattle Seahawks is without question one of the worst in the NFL. But when you just look at how Russell Wilson is able to be so smart, like you mentioned, Jansen, on the field, off the field, the way he takes care of his body, but the way that he doesn't make dumb plays as well. And I know the 5 picks over the last 3 games, but can you really go back and find another time in Russell Wilson's career where, 1, he was playing football this well, and 2, when he was throwing that many interceptions within a span of a game like that? I mean, a 121 passer rating and almost 72% completion. Russell Wilson is playing the best football of his life without question. And honestly, I don't see how anybody could surpass him to be the MVP. Of course, you've got your Mahomes, and I agree with you as well. You really could think that Tom Brady could come up and play it, and let's say Mahomes and Wilson just have a game or 2 that's off. I could totally see Tom Brady taking it, but as of right now, stepping into week 9 of the 2020 NFL season, Russell Wilson is my MVP. I want to take a dive into the coach of the year. Jansen, who would be your coach of the year if you had to put the award on it today?
If I had to put the award on somebody, I'm going to give it to Mike Tomlin. Just a couple years ago, people were
Very good
calling for Mike
decision.
Tomlin's job. They were saying he's a bad coach. He's overrated. I even hear guys like Bill Cowher, unfortunately, former coaches, and other people just saying a lot of unfortunate things about him. And to me, I was disturbed at the time because I think Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the league, and he's showing
Exactly.
it
He's
this
never had
year.
a losing season in 14 years, and he's about to do it again if he wins this weekend, man.
Exactly. So first of all, that is really big because not a lot of coaches could say that because just go look at Bill Belichick. I'm not saying he's as great as him. Obviously, he's not. But they're struggling right now in New England, 2-5. So that puts things in perspective how hard this is to do. And put in
It's hard to
account
win
too.
games in the NFL, and people don't understand that.
Exactly. And when you lose 2 All-Pros like they did in the last couple of years, losing a Le'Veon Bell, who was an All-Pro type of player, he was a Pro Bowler, he was a monster, he was one of the best backs in the league, one of the best patient runners. He was able to put up numbers, control games for Pittsburgh.
Right.
Well, he got himself out of Pittsburgh, sat out the year, and then he was gone. He gave a lot of fits to Mike Tomlin, and that shook up their locker room. Then Antonio Brown, let's not forget, he was one of the top players in the league, period,
Exactly.
before he was doing everything he was doing, and he got the big head and all his issues, and I won't get into that yet. But I'm just going to say, when you lose 2 All-Pros and you're able to do what you're able to do with this Pittsburgh team, being 7-0, Big Ben, I can't forget about that either.
Yeah,
Big
they
Ben
lost
talking
Big Ben,
about
AB, and Le'Veon all in 1 year, essentially, man.
exactly. And Big Ben, what did he talk about? He didn't know if he wanted to play football. He does this every offseason. He didn't know if he wanted to play football. Sometimes I question if he's even in shape. But I have to give him credit
Yeah.
as well, too. He's been a great leader. He's been keeping things together. But back to Mike Tomlin, that's not easy to do, Adam. It's not easy to be able to rebuild your team. James Conner put confidence in him.
Yep.
Juju Smith putting confidence in him.
Yep.
Claypool,
Oh, yeah.
he's a hell of a player already.
Yep.
So Mike Tomlin, I think, is a great motivator. He gets his guys up. He's a next man up type of guy. It makes me even think if Big Ben wasn't there, he would still produce with this team. I think he's that type of coach. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league, and he's proven it this year. And he'll win Coach of the Year if they can keep it up. Because right now they have control of that first seed.
Yep.
And I just want to say this, and I have another Pittsburgh person on this list. I want to say this about Pittsburgh. When you could rush the passer, you could run the football, you have a pretty good passing game. This is one of the most complete teams in the league. They could give the Chiefs a run for their money.
And I'm, completely sold on that Pittsburgh defense. But I feel like if there is a hole in the Pittsburgh offense, it has to boil down to Big Ben, because you look at the Tennessee game, he didn't even necessarily play well in that Tennessee game. And being up so much on the Titans, and then the Titans coming back and just being able to just about choke out the Steelers in the second half of that football game, Big Ben throwing those couple of interceptions. I mean, it was tough. It was definitely tough. Big Ben's not playing his best football right now, coming off the elbow and everything. But I definitely have to agree with you that Mike Tomlin could be in the running for the Coach of the Year. They are locked. They are loaded right now. And like I mentioned, Mike Tomlin is 1 win away from having his 15th consecutive season, never having a losing record. To me, when I think of Coach of the Year, I think about a guy who's come in and who's taken that team in an instance of what Sean McVay did, from worst to first, making the Rams the best offense in the league, taking them to the NFC Championship in his second year as a coach. I mean, just what he was able to do so early on in his career at such a young age. He's only primed for greatness for at least the next decade, no matter where he's coaching at. You look at guys like Kyle Shanahan, who were able to go into Atlanta, propel them to a Super Bowl, go to another San Francisco team, propel them to a Super Bowl. Obviously, we know how the fourth quarter and Kyle Shanahan get along, not very well. But when you talk about guys that can come in and just rebuild the roster, rebuild the locker room, get all the mojo into the players, I got to take a look at Cliff Kingsbury from the Arizona Cardinals. You want to talk about a guy who has really turned this team around, really made Arizona a potential shot to go deep into the playoffs. I mean, no, I'm not saying they'll be in the NFC Championship, but don't be surprised if they're only a call or maybe a play or two away from the NFC title game. Really should have a playoff run this year. Kyler Murray's playing the best football he's had, obviously only his second year in the NFL, but bringing in a guy like DeAndre Hopkins with a guy like Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald, of course, Kenyon Drake is still able to run the football. And I mean, the Cardinals got players on offense and on defense especially. And I don't know if people know, but quietly, the Arizona Cardinals are top 10 in the NFL in offense and defense statistically. I got to say, the way Kyler Murray has been able to mature under Cliff Kingsbury, I mean, I think he could be a top 5 quarterback by the end of this year if he keep this up. And I'd say within the next 3 to 5 years, Kyler Murray could be an MVP as well. I mean, he throws one of the prettiest footballs in the league. For a guy that's technically only like 5'7", according to NFL standards, he can still throw that ball 50 yards down the field. And I mean, I think he's the shiftiest quarterback in the NFL. And the fact that him and Cliff Kingsbury are both essentially sophomores in the NFL right now, I just think that screams coach of the year when you're able to bring in a very young guy like Kyler, who had all the odds stacked against him. Some people said he shouldn't have even been top 10, shouldn't have won the Heisman. I can kind of agree with shouldn't have won the Heisman. Don't get me wrong, he had a hell of a year, but I think there were other players in that college year that could have surpassed him for it. But either way, the guy was the number 1 overall pick. He's in the NFL, obviously, and they're sitting at a good spot. If I had to pin my Coach of the Year award for the 2020 NFL season, I'm going to have to give it to Cliff Kingsbury. Segueing over, though, into the Defensive Player of the Year award. Jansen, I'll let you tackle it again, man. Who would be your Defensive Player of the Year if you had to name it today?
My guy would be TJ Watt. I know everybody's
Huge.
talking about Aaron Donald. He leads the league in sacks. He's been a monster. I understand it. But how many times you want to give him the award, okay?
Right.
How about TJ Watt? He's on the best team in the league. He finished 3rd last year in the voting. He's coming up, man. He's one of those young guys who consistently brings that pressure. A teammate of his said this. He said, look, he doesn't waste plays. He always gets to the quarterback. He's smart with his decision-making. He doesn't waste energy, and that means he could have a long season. And I agree. When I look at TJ Watt, 4th in sacks, he has the numbers. He's on one of the most productive defenses in the league. They average the most sacks per game. So right now, I'll give it to the young guy, TJ Watt. But in that conversation, too, you could throw Myles Garrett in there. He's been a beast. He was a beast last year before he got suspended. He's sure and due to win a Defensive Player of the Year award. He's quick, he's fast, he's crafty. So he's right up there with him. And obviously the name I brought up first, Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald, what he's able to do, and now he's even more productive with the sacks. I think he's having more success because for some odd reason, teams, they're trying to double team him, but maybe they're not doing it as much. That's why he's getting – I don't know. He's just getting more sacks. Usually he doesn't get as many sacks at this point in the year because
this year, man, he's playing great football.
Yeah, because of them double teams, sometimes even the triple teams. The running back give a little shove after the double team, so it's usually tough for him. They game plan around him. But this year, I give him credit for what he's able to do. But at the end of the day, I want to see new blood, so I'm going with T.J. Watt on the Steelers, on the most impressive team right now, on the most surprising team, because, yes, we thought the Steelers would be productive and their defense would be pretty good, but not this good, especially in the sacks area where teams struggle in pressuring the quarterback. And that's a recipe for what? Victories. So when they bring in every game, he brings in every game. Like I said before, great technique. I have to go with T.J. Watt.
And I'm actually going to stick with your mojo here for a second, not specifically on TJ Watt. I know he's already got it twice, but Aaron Donald is playing damn good football this year. And if I had to give it to someone right now, only because Myles Garrett is going to be out until after the bye week for the Cleveland Browns, I'd have to go with Aaron Donald with 9 sacks, 3 fumbles, a fumble recovered. I mean, like I mentioned, Myles Garrett missing time could really help AD step up and run with it. You look at the strength and the speed of Aaron Donald. I don't think anybody in the NFL compares to the combination of the two. I mean, he's throwing guys like Zeke Elliott on the ground. He's throwing top 5, top 3 offensive linemen just to the side on the ground, embarrassing guys. And we obviously know if Aaron Donald gets his hands on you, he's going to be able to bring you down. I think he has a big part in that Los Angeles Rams defense. I mean, you look, they're a balanced team as well. Obviously, they just struggled against Miami. I would love to see the hardware go to somebody else, but if the guy's out there just earning it straight up, I'd have to go with Aaron Donald. He's just the most, I think, naturally athletic and just physically gifted freak on defense right now. Like I mentioned, with the size, the speed, the strength. I really don't know if there's anybody in the NFL who is stronger or more powerful than Aaron Donald right now, pound for pound. But before we wrap up today's episode, everybody, we're going to dive into the last award here on the What Off Season Sports Podcast. I'm, of course, Adam Lewis, host of the show, having Jansen Harris with me, CEO of the Just Good Network, and the host of the Final Play Sports Podcast. Be sure to check us out everywhere you get your podcast at. If I had to pin the Offensive Player of the Year award. I'm going to my boy Alvin Kamara. Yes, I'm repping him right here in the background. No, I didn't put the jersey up just for this episode. I would have to go with Alvin Kamara, and here's why. The dude is carrying the New Orleans Saints offense right now. But forget that. Outside of that, you look at the way that he's able to basically average 20 touches and 140 yards combined with a score from scrimmage per game. I don't know if many people know this. Alvin Kamara is on pace for almost 1,300 receiving yards, a little under 1,000 rushing yards, and 16 touchdowns. And he's on pace for the record for receiving yards and receptions by a running back. You want to talk about a guy who was just about Christian McCaffrey 2.0? I had a segment that I put out a couple weeks before the NFL season started, and I was saying, if you go look at all the numbers around the league, if you really want to get a true dual threat comparison for Christian McCaffrey, you have nobody else to look at but Alvin Kamara if you're truly comparing. Yes, I know about Dalvin Cook. I know about Austin Eckler. I know about Joe Mixon, but look at the shiftiness on the field and what they bring to the team. It's got to be Alvin Kamara. And I believe when the Saints agreed to pay him as the second highest paid running back in the NFL behind CMC, it's almost like, how could you not then understand and realize that now even the Saints are valuing him as well as Christian McCaffrey? And of course, it's the Saints. That's his organization. They're supposed to back him. But paying a running back second highest paid in the league, you obviously have to be doing something. And I just really want to know who is doing more offensively for their team right now. I know about Patrick Mahomes, and I mean, all I've really heard for other offensive player of the year awards is Patrick Mahomes. And I mean, Alvin Kamara, man, is just balling this year. I think he's on the comeback season this year. The way he's able to provide that spark for the Saints offense, you can definitely say the offense is running through him right now. And I know when Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders come back, they're going to have to get their share as well. But if I had to give away the Offensive Player of the Year award right now, it's my boy, AK-41. Jansen, who is your Offensive Player of the Year before we finish up today?
You know what? I'm going to stick to running backs as well, too. I'm glad you said that. Alvin Kamara, always impressive. I've seen him in a couple Monday night games, I believe, and he's shaking and baking, doing everything he can to get yardage. He's healthy for the most part. So when he's healthy, he puts up
this year, man.
Yep, he puts up numbers, and I agree. To me, the offensive MVP for the Saints, clearly the best player on that Saints team this season.
Thank you. People
don't give him his credit.
I even think when Michael Thomas was healthy, bro. Even when Michael Thomas was healthy, I think it was
And he's had some injuries. You're right. With Michael Thomas, I don't know what the hell's going on with him, but he's been out. Drew Brees isn't really the same player. I don't look at the Saints like they're a great team. I know we're not talking about teams, but that just boosts up Kamara and how much I value him as well, too. Exactly. But my guy, man, I think he's just the most dominant running back. Let's go with Derrick Henry.
Agreed.
First in rushing yards, man. This guy is a tank. He runs a 4.5. He is a beast. You saw the stiff arm play against the Bills on Tuesday night weeks ago. He's a grown man. It was on Josh Norman? Yeah, he does things like that. He averages 110 yards a game. That's best in the NFL. 8 touchdowns. That's second. 8 rushing touchdowns. That's second in the NFL right now. He has the most rushing yards. He runs guys over, runs through guys. I know they just lost to the Bengals. Still rushed for $116.
Exactly.
You had a couple weeks ago, he rushed for over 200 yards and 2 scores. Who's doing it like him, man? He's one of these old school guys. We know the running backs aren't getting the touches or aren't getting those 100-yard games, but he's averaging over 100 yards. To me, and he probably won't get the award, but I look at him as the most dominant running back. I know McCaffrey's out and Kamara's up there. When I look at a pure running back, yeah, he's not the dual threat guy. He's not catching a lot of passes, but he's a guy who can consistently get 100 yards on the ground. He could change the game. He could eat up the clock. They shouldn't have lost to the Bengals, but I'm not going to put that all on him. But at the end of the day, he's one of the reasons why they're 5-2, and they made a trip to the AFC Championship game last year against the Chiefs. They fell short, but they keep running the football, keep getting good play out of Ryan Tannehill. And the defense, I love what I'm seeing out of them for the most part. They also could go deep in the playoffs, like I said about Pittsburgh. And I'll throw this little key in too as well before we wrap this up. Everybody thinks the Chiefs are unbeatable. I'll tell you this, they're not coming through the AFC. They will not be in the Super Bowl this year. I'm taking the field because a team like the Titans, a team like the Steelers, a team like even Baltimore, you committing to that running game, killing the clock, having Patrick Mahomes off the field, and not trying to get off topic. But, again, Derrick Henry, He could be
Derrick
that guy.
Henry's
Deep in
the guy
playoffs
that
to
could
make
do
another
it.
deep run.
Derrick Henry's 100% the guy that could definitely do it. You want to talk
Exactly.
about being able to keep Mahomes off the field? I mean, you look at what he did last year in the AFC Championship. I said it last year, and people wanted to erupt on me before the season started. I said, who is better than Derrick Henry right now? Take the momentum. Take any running back, how their season ended last year. Who in their right mind is playing better football, and who can tell me and show me who is playing better football and providing more for their team offensively than Derrick Henry? He was I wouldn't say he was the sole reason last year for the Tennessee Titans in the playoffs, but everybody knew if Derrick Henry was back there, you're probably going to have 6 guys in the box at minimum because he's going to make 5 guys or less pay. There's no question. And I feel you on the Chiefs potentially being able to be knocked off in the AFC. I do have to say it, though. I do think the Kansas City Chiefs are still the best team in the NFL. The defense is starting to come around. Now they can take the pressure off Mahomes with Lev Bell and CEH being able to run the football. But I do feel you with a team like Baltimore. I definitely, if I had to pick one team in the AFC that could stop the Kansas City Chiefs, it's going to have to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. If Mahomes could get through a defense with the caliber of Pittsburgh, I know he did it last year in the Super Bowl, so I definitely give him credit there. But I think this year's Steelers defense, it's always been about defense in Pittsburgh. I think this year's Steelers defense is better than last year's San Francisco defense. But I like that offensive player of the year prediction with Derrick Henry. I could perfectly see it happening. Derrick Henry has kept up the momentum all year. He showed people that he's here to stay. He showed people that last year wasn't a fluke. And I think especially with the Titans, like you mentioned as well, they were here to show people that last season wasn't a fluke. So I could definitely see Derrick Henry taking home the hardware for the offensive player of the year. That's going to wrap up today's episode of the What Offseason Sports Podcast. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode as we came at you with our 2020 midseason predictions for the NFL year. We handed out our MVP, offensive and defensive player of the year awards, and the coach of the year. Go ahead and blow us up. Tell us where we're right. Tell us where we're wrong. Like, comment, subscribe. As always, you can check out What Offseason at the link in the bio. Every bit of content we're putting out, it's right there in the link. And Jansen, if you don't mind, man, since you just got the podcast started, tell me what's coming up next on the Final Play.
Final Play, we're breaking down the best quarterbacks in the league. We're talking about some of the best running backs. We're talking NBA. We're talking boxing. We're talking MLB.
I'm going to have to get on there for some boxing, man.
Yep. It's uncut. You know, some UFC in there, too. It's uncut. It's uncensored. We're keeping it real. You feel me? It's very transparent and straight to the point. So look out for that this week. Again, thank you for having me on. Also, guys, go check out that Just Good Network page as well, too. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Like he said, like, comment, and subscribe. Show us love. Hit us up.